Sam Donaldson.
It's one of the most puzzling questions in science and human nature. What makes someone homosexual? Is it genetics? Is it the environment? Or a combination of the two? Just this week, a study was released involving male twins that seems to point to genetics. But so far, the most dramatic and controversial evidence has come from a highly respected scientist in California who until recently worked in relative obscurity. Jay Shadler talked to Dr. Simon LeVay about his findings and their startling implications.
I'm quite convinced that homosexuality is a natural part of the human condition.
Right now, we're beginning to believe that there's a biological basis to homosexuality.
There's a very dark, scary side to this.
If you had the choice to prevent homosexuality, should you exercise it?
Is it right or wrong? Is it born or bred? It's an old debate, but with a new debater.
You know, of course, that your research is going to be used by political forces on either side of the
That's probably right,
homosexual issue.
That's probably right. I mean, like these extreme fundamentalist types who say, here we have now proof that being gay is a disease, you know, it's a defect in the brain, let's see if we can wipe it out or cure it. But on the other hand, you know, the opposite point of view says, yes, this research, you know, proves that we really are deeply different.
Dr. Simon LeVay believes homosexuals are not only different, but that difference is completely normal. He says there's no contradiction in that, just the logical result of his own discoveries, both as a gay man and a respected neurobiologist at the Salk Institute in San Diego.
Here we have a human brain. This is the left hemisphere, this is the right hemisphere, it's the front and the back.
Over a period of 18 months, LeVay studied the brains of 41 cadavers, 19 homosexual men, 16 heterosexual men, and 6 women.
And here on the underside of the brain is, in this general region, a much smaller region called the hypothalamus, which seems to be the part of the brain that's to do with generating our instinctual drives, so hunger, thirst, sex drives, and so on. And it's a part of this region that I've been examining in terms of differences related to sexual orientation.
Focusing on this cluster of cells, roughly the size of a grain of sand and known to be associated with sexual activity, LeVay traced and measured the differences between his homosexual and heterosexual subjects.
That difference that you see there is
quite dramatic.
Yes, that's probably
difference.
somewhat larger.
Analyzed by the computer, this brain section of heterosexual men turned out to be roughly 3 times the size of the homosexuals.
Most of these differences you see in the brain and so on are pretty statistical things. This was like a really massive difference.
What you found, in other words, was that, at least for this portion of the brain of a homosexual man more closely resembles a woman than a heterosexual man.
Right, that's exactly right. And that would make sense if this is something to do with sexual orientation, because after all, that's one thing we know that gay men have in common with most women, that they're attracted to men. So if this is a part of the brain that's involved in that job, then it wouldn't be unreasonable to say that the structure should be similar.
Are the differences that you observe the cause of homosexuality or the effect?
I would put I would put most of my money on the idea that it's cause rather than effect.
I don't buy that.
Professor Ann Fausto Sterling teaches developmental biology at Brown University. She is one of a handful of scientists who openly criticize LeVay's research as oversimplified.
What he's doing is taking sexuality and reducing it. It's either a masculine or a feminine. It's either straight or it's gay. And what I'm arguing is that human sexuality isn't like that. We all are both masculine and feminine to varying degrees. We are all both straight and gay to varying degrees.
Ever since Freud, psychologists have tried to link male homosexuality with events and behavior in early childhood. Overly protective mothers, absent fathers, child-rearing habits have all been suggested as triggering homosexuality. But a number of major studies, including those done at the Kinsey Institute, have now concluded that predicting whether a person will become gay based on environmental factors is nearly impossible. Increasingly, it seems that the die is cast at the earliest stages of life.
Were you ever interested in women at all?
No.
Did you ever had a heterosexual experience?
Yes, I have, yeah.
And your reaction to that?
It just sort of left me cold, you know. It just had no kind of emotional content to it.
Though the human brain lies at the center of LeVay's research, the motivation for his study was strictly a matter of the heart. For 21 years, Dr. LeVay's constant companion and lover was a physician named Richard Hersey. When Richard developed AIDS in 1987, Simon was there to care for and chronicle his partner's slow slide to death 2 years ago.
It was very painful. It's the feeling of helplessness, I think, more than anything, and you're not going to stop it, you know, there's nothing you can do, basically, to prevent somebody going downhill and dying.
In the days following Richard's death, LeVay was hospitalized for depression. He considered abandoning forever his work as a scientist, but he did not. As a memorial to Richard, he devoted himself to understanding the nature of homosexuality. Working alone at night, LeVay began the research that expanded on earlier studies conducted with rats by Dr. Roger Gorski at UCLA.
It's amazing what the hormones do.
According to Gorski, the physical brain structure and sexual behavior of rats can be permanently changed by manipulating their hormones. To prove the point, this white female rat has been given male sex hormones, and she becomes the aggressor, initiating sex.
There, we have reversed the behavior of these animals by treating them shortly after birth, and it's a permanent change in their brain function.
LeVay's work is not just being debated in scientific laboratories. In an effort to put a human face on his statistical findings, Simon LeVay has been doing some non-scientific polling of his own.
Were you gay then?
I've been gay from day one, so...
Did you read that article? Was genetically...
predisposed to be gay.
It was in the brain.
Oh, no, yeah, that's my research. I'm the person who did that research, yeah.
Oh, you're the
yeah.
Many gay men and women, though they were not part of LeVay's study, believe his scientific findings confirm their personal feelings.
I'm one of these people, I've always known I was gay.
Well, I mean, suppose somebody say you just press this button, it'll just drive an electrode into your hypothalamus and make you heterosexual.
No, I wouldn't change for anything.
From the moment his findings were published this past summer in the respected journal Science, LeVay has increasingly become a lightning rod for controversy.
This whole scientific theory worries me because I think that we live in a society that totally dislikes gay and lesbian people. No.
At a gay political gathering in Los Angeles, words of personal support for Dr. LeVay mingled with voices of fear.
You'll start having really scary kind of Clockwork Orange type of attitudes where people want to, like, eliminate gay and lesbian people.
That may not be such an idle concern. In a hospital room at the University of California, Irvine, Dr. LeVay is about to have his brain scanned.
We have a beautiful image of your brain.
Building on LeVay's research with cadavers, his colleague Laura Allen is trying to see if differences between the brains of living males and females, homosexuals and heterosexuals, can be visually detected. Though the image of LeVay's brain and that of a heterosexual male show a slight difference, the test results are only preliminary. Today, it's just an experiment. Tomorrow, it could become a medical reality.
I know people who work in like prenatal diagnosis laboratories who have gotten phone calls since the big publicity about the study from people saying, I want to test my fetus, how can I test for it? It's not possible to test for it, but clearly...
With what implication?
The implication would be selective abortion.
Do you think that if parents had a choice for their child to be heterosexual or homosexual, they would choose homosexuality?
Well, I think there'll always be some people probably who are very, very disturbed about homosexuality. There are some people who have very, very intense hatred of homosexuals.
Do you, in fact, find homosexuality to be abhorrent?
Yes, I do.
David LeVay and Marjorie Hare, both physicians, are Simon's parents.
If you could choose whether your child were homosexual or heterosexual, which would you choose?
Well, I choose him to be heterosexual, simply because it's simpler, isn't it? It's what people expect of you.
It's probably fair to say that Simon LeVay's notions about the origins of being gay were born here in Oxford, England. That's because Simon was born here, too, into a family that's sort of a living portrait of Simon's theories about homosexuality. Among the LeVay's 5 children, all boys, 2 are heterosexual. 2, including Simon, are gay, and a third is bisexual, supporting Simon's belief that homosexuality is genetic, running in families.
If homosexuality is a condition that a person is born into, as Simon's work would suggest, why did it take you so long to recognize his preference?
Well, no, I had no idea. No idea at all.
I don't think there were any signs to see, actually. I don't see them now.
And you may find this difficult to believe. I've never discussed homosexuality with Simon until just a few days ago when this interview was coming up.
Really?
You've never discussed the fact that he is gay?
Never.
I mean, I'd like to discuss this with him and see what he thinks.
Probably say I was a stereotypical pre-homosexual boy. That is, a boy who was destined to become gay in like things like not enjoying rough sports, liking reading, not getting on that well with my dad, being fairly close to my mother. All these things that people say about kids who later become gay actually did apply in my case, at least.
Add to that list the divorce of his parents when he was 13, and you have what was once thought to be a classic environmental cause for homosexuality.
Now, when I put this to Simon, and this was only the other day, for the first time in our lives, he asked me to forget all this. He said it was nonsense, that it was nothing to do with the breakup of the marriage, that he'd always been like that since he was 13, and that he liked being a homosexual, and that I must stop blaming myself.
Looking back on it, did your parents in any way encourage your sexual preference, one way or the other?
Well, I think, you know, part of my mother tried to push me into dating girls and things like that.
She did?
Yeah.
Go out and find a nice girl, Simon?
Yes, that sort of thing. I mean, I thought I was acting so obviously gay.
I have this idea, which I admit must seem a hopelessly old-fashioned conservative idea to you, that heterosexuality is normal, and that it's what God intended people to be.
If that's true, did God do something wrong with Simon?
No, I think things happen that God allows to happen.
Well, you sort of want it both ways here, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Now, there's one other thing I'd like to say in connection with Simon's life with Richard, and that is that relationship generated love and devotion on a scale I've never seen before, and which I know that I would be incapable of.
With all respect, are you suggesting that Simon's love for Richard may actually have been greater than your love for Marjorie?
Yes, I do.
It's such a conceptual gulf. I don't think ever, you know, gay and straight people understand each other any more than, you know, men and women really understand each other. So what I would hope for, so the ultimate benefit of my work, to teach people that being gay or being straight, they're both natural behaviors, and they're both something that, that one can accept in oneself and in other people.
Dr. LeVay cautions that his findings are preliminary. He's waiting for funds to conduct an expanded study that will include gay people who don't have AIDS.